Welcome, beautiful people, to season 3, episode 6 of Jahmi Roc's Jottings, this seriously silly space for intentional musicology, sonic joy, and the kind of reggae insight that'll keep your mind rocking and your thoughts swaying. I'm your host, Jahmi Roc, also known as Racquel Bernard, and today we're going somewhere different, somewhere personal, somewhere true. Today, I'm opening the notebooks, literally and figuratively, to talk about my PhD dissertation journey and the heart behind Empress Epistemologies, Black women's reggae and intersectional resistance. This is not a highlights reel. This is the real story, the struggle, the setbacks, the seasons of barely holding on, and the kind of joy that only comes from doing something that actually matters. And I'm telling this story tonight because my dissertation defense is this Friday. So let's get into it. For those of you who are brand new to this space, welcome home, first of all. Jahmi Roc's Jottings is a podcast and about music, especially reggae and other Jamaican popular music. But it's also so much more than that. It's a space where musicology meets lived experience, where the academic meets the artist, where research and rhythm are not opposites, they're partners. I'm a singer songwriter, a PhD candidate in musicology at UCLA, and I blend genres reggae, dancehall, R&B, hip hop, gospel, because my soul doesn't live in one box, and neither does my research. Now, how did I end up in musicology? Because I will be honest with you, I had never even heard the word musicology before I decided to switch to it. I started my PhD journey at USC in American Studies and Ethnicity. My advisor there eventually got a position in African American Studies and musicology at UCLA, and the PhD program was in musicology. So I had to make a choice, and I made it. But here's the thing about that transition musicology has very white roots. I was coming from interdisciplinary studies that center marginalized communities. I had a bachelor's in African and African American studies from Dartmouth College and a master's in cultural studies from the University of the West Indies Mona campus. That is my foundation. Thankfully, my current advisor, Bob Fink, told me early on that UCLA is, and I'm quoting him directly here, a designated crazy school. Our projects were expected to go against the grain of traditional musicology. So having a foot in both disciplines was not a liability, it was my superpower. My work deals with culture, society, and politics as they intertwine with the way music actually sounds. And that brings me to reggae. When I was studying at UWI, the University of the West Indies Mona campus in Jamaica, I was in the Institute of Cultural Studies in the Reggae Studies unit. And I thought, I'm literally in the Reggae Studies unit. Maybe I should study reggae. I was also deeply interested in social change. So when my professor, Dr. Waller, pointed me toward Peter Tosh, I tried to wiggle around it. I said, what about the Wailers? And he shut that down fast. He said, there is enough already written about Bob Marley. Do Peter Tosh. So I did. And studying Peter Tosh's cultural legacy opened a door I never closed. Fast forward to UCLA. It's the fall of 2017. I'm in a graduate seminar. I write a think piece, a paper I am now calling the seed of my dissertation. And in that paper, I coin a term, Empress Epistemologies. I was inspired by the late scholar Clyde Woods and his concept of blues epistemology, the idea that the blues were not just a genre, it was a way of knowing, a way of making sense of the world. I took that framework and I asked, what about empresses? What about powerful women? How do they create knowledge? How do they theorize the world? That is what Empress Epistemologies is. It is a framework for how powerful women, how empresses, build, carry, and transmit knowledge. I also coined another term in that paper, negritude musicality, but I let that one go. The negritude movement was a generation before where I wanted to focus, and the term also carried a different kind of weight in the Brazilian context where some of my earlier research was pointing. When I tried to flesh it out, it kept falling flat. My advisor at the time pushed back on it, and you know what? Knowing when to let a concept go is part of the intellectual process. Not everything that sounds brilliant at 2 a.m. belongs in your dissertation. Sometimes the edit is the work. Let me paint you a picture of my first 2 years at UCLA. I completed my master's exam at the end of my first year, so I had my master's in musicology. I was teaching undergrads, I was in graduate seminars, I was co coordinating the Distinguished Lecturer Series for my department. I was trying to launch a study abroad program, and I was on a competitive hip hop dance team, NSU Modern, where I was spending more than 20 hours a week just on dancing. People ask me how I was feeling myself during that time, and I'm going to be honest with you because this podcast is a space for truth. I was struggling with weed addiction. I would smoke instead of rest. I was running on quick meals, homemade breakfast bite dinners I would pack and bring to campus. I would go full 24-hour stretches awake, doing something or another the whole time. But here is what I want you to hear alongside that. I was doing something beautiful. I took my dance team membership and I made it academic. I brought a scholar and a cultural ambassador from Jamaica to campus, Donna Hope and Latanya Style, to teach about dancehall music. Latanya Style did 2 dance workshops, one specific for NSU Modern and one open to the rest of campus. Donna Hope did a seminar and together they delivered a keynote lecture, Style on an introduction to dancehall, Hope on the deeper cultural analysis. And NSU Modern were co-sponsors of the entire series. So physically and intellectually, I was sharing Jamaican culture with my teammates, my department, and the wider university. I was living inside the intersection of my research and my body. That is what it looks like to be called to something. You find ways to bring it everywhere you go. But I was not taking care of myself, and that would catch up with me. In the summer of 2018, I transitioned to full time with my part time job that was very rigorous, that I balanced with teaching at UCLA. And in this full time transition, traveled to China for a trip. In China, I stopped sleeping, extreme insomnia. My mind and body were done. When I finally got back to Los Angeles, I had to go to a mental health hospital. I went twice that summer, then did an outpatient program. I had to quit the job. What I do want listeners to understand about hitting a wall um, that hard is that you need to sleep, nourish yourself. Do not spread yourself too thin. Do not let capitalism convince you that your value is your productivity. I had felt like I could do it all and I could do a lot, but that is not the same as it being sustainable. I look back at that season as a lesson, a hard, humbling, necessary lesson. I also want to acknowledge something about that summer that carried a different kind of grief. I had earned a Fulbright to go to Salvador Bahia in Brazil for a year. A Fulbright. That is something most PhD students only dream about, and I could not go because I could not get medical clearance. I had to sit with that. But when I look at my life now, especially being a mom to Xenia, I know it was not meant to be at that time. Living abroad for a year is something I can revisit when she's older. And I have learned that being very competitive and driven means there will always be other opportunities, other grants, other doors. That Fulbright was a reflection of my drive. The timing just wasn't right. When I returned to school that fall, my department helped me get accommodations and ease back into work slowly. And I'm grateful for that. But I also want to be real. I had to fight for myself. Institutional support does not always show up without you advocating loudly for your own needs. I have seen UCLA make changes in how they handle these situations since then, and I will say this: thank Jah for the Student Workers Union. Mhm. I returned to a full schedule in winter 2019. I was rebuilding, I was refocusing, and then 2020 happened. If you caught the last episode about my song last time, I went deep into that second half of 2020. I won't rehash all of it tonight, but what I will say is medical leave and housing insecurity is brutal in ways that nobody prepares you for. There's no template for it. I survived because people gave me donations, because my community showed up. I am so deeply grateful for every person who held me during that time. I returned to school in spring 2021 and came back knowing that my advisor had dropped me and a committee member and exam committee member had removed themselves. I had to reconstitute my committee. Did it feel like a setback? Yes. But finding the right people for my committee, people who actually believed in my work, that was a gift. There was a professor who stayed with me the whole time, and that consistency meant everything. I had various meetings, heard some no's, heard some I can't because of my role, but in the end, I had the right group around me. Winter 2023, I had another flare up with mental health, did a short medical leave, came back, and failed my special fields exam. I'm going to say that plainly because there is no other way to say it. I failed. And I felt ready to quit. I had thought about quitting at various points before, considered switching programs, but this moment hit differently. I felt low in a way that reached into everything. I didn't even want to perform, I didn't want to sing. And if you know me, you know music is my oxygen, you know. I had 6 months to prepare for my retake. And that is when I created this podcast. Jahmi Roc's Jottings was born out of necessity, out of desperation, even out of a need to survive academically and creatively at the same time. I built it to pass my exam, and what happened was magic. I got excited about reading again, about studying. The podcast gave me a creative outlet, a place to speak and sing about my research for an actual audience. And then I would listen to my own episodes over and over to ingrain the knowledge. I was literally studying through my own voice. There was also real financial pressure riding on that retake. I had lost my teaching eligibility. I fell behind on rent. I had to reach out to my uh, school's economic crisis team. I reached out to my community again, but I also got positioned as a academic researcher, which became a lifeline. And that professor I was working with in art history, she actually later became the outside department member of my dissertation committee. See, sometimes things just align. By winter 2024, I passed. I passed the orals and revised one of my essays to fully clear the written portion. When that final word came through, ooh, I was thrilled. I was elated. I genuinely thought I was going to fail again. Seriously. But I had advocated for accommodations, enough time on my essays, and I pushed through. The days where I felt completely frozen on the page, when the weight lifted, that feeling was everything. Now, spring 2024, I passed my prospectus defense, and the prospectus is the proposal of the dissertation. That prospectus summed up my decision to shift, to narrow my focus to reggae music only. No more samba reggae, which is what I would have studied in Bahia, Salvador da Bahia. Um, as much as I loved that idea of looking at Brazil and looking at samba reggae, I had to just pick a focus. No, why reggae? Because I love it. Simple as that. And I wanted to situate my research in Jamaica, leave room for future fieldwork there, and shine a light on the women of the genre. They do not get enough scholarly attention, full stop. My dissertation centers women like Judy Maud and Marcia Griffiths, foundational voices. Queen Ifrica, Itana, Kofi, Lila Ike, Kalissa, Sugar, artists carrying the tradition forward with power and purpose. And it also centers women in Los Angeles, women like me, Empress Truth, Empress Akuya, DJ Papaloto, Sarah Aiken. This is a diaspora story too. Their voices matter because they are singing powerful or DJing powerful anthems for social change. They're leaders, their stories matter. They make great music that simply does not get attention it deserves in academic spaces or sometimes even mainstream reggae spaces. And how does reggae function as resistance? Like other popular genres, reggae takes heavy subjects and makes them sound sweet, makes them danceable. That is a part of its genius and its politics. You're moving your body to something that is dismantling the system. Intersectional resistance in reggae sounds like chest voice, mixed voice, head voice, all deployed for different emotional and political purposes. The vocal inflections, the arrangements, the textures of the voices, they emphasize the message. And then the lyrics grapple with sexism, racism, classism all at once. It is layered. That layering is the whole point. Getting the dissertation written was its own journey. Deep listening sessions, revisiting old writing, the dissertation seminar led by one of my professors, Ray Knapp, was a tremendous help. And I have to shout out my accountability people, co working with Christy, Nikki, the body doubling room kept me moving, and my cousin Debbie, the accountability meetings we did together, those were everything. This Friday, my dissertation defense is this Friday, and I cannot wait. Mm, 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 mm. I genuinely, truly cannot wait. My advisor has told me he does not anticipate any major revisions and that I should have no problem defending. I just want to sit in that room with my committee and talk about this work. Work I have poured in years, tears, hospitalizations, heartbreak, and absolute joy into. I want to hear what they think about it. I'm also going to be the graduate student speaker at commencement in June. And when I stand at that podium, I want to say what I know to be true, that a setback can be a setup for an awesome success. I went through so much as a graduate student, so much, but I'm still here. I still made it. And this dissertation, after I defend it, it will be published and archived digitally through ProQuest Dissertations and Theses Global and the University of California's Open Access Repository e-scholarship. It will be findable. It will be there for the next scholar, the next woman, the next empress who needs language for what she already knows. This entire journey has taught me to be grateful for my community and to be proud of myself and to never give up. If you are out there tonight carrying something unfinished, something scary, something that matters, I want you to hear this. A dissertation is written one letter at a time. Your project is built one step at a time. Break it down, make it small, and just keep going because hmm, the journey is the music. Until next time, this has been Jahmi Roc. Keep your mind rocking, your thoughts swaying, and as always, keep jamming.